you're a little more proper.
That's a bold assumption saying we're friends.
That's true.
Damn.
Okay, so you have some hired help that you berate, and then you have some hired help that you don't berate.
Yeah.
Well, all right, I gotta put my phone on Do Not Disturb because I'm getting blown up.
You are important, sir.
Yeah.
This is why I contract out.
Welcome back to RidgeSide K9 EC Radio, where today we're talking about how to teach your dog to recall. Essentially, doing a couple videos like this already. We're going to be doing some guided discussion on how to help dog teach certain things. And today we're doing recall. So getting your dog to come back to you.
Get your notebook out. Take
called.
Notes.
Yeah.
How do you start it?
So for me, Again, I guess we talked about it earlier.
Let's do ideal and then real world.
Yeah. Oh, and what I was gonna say was like, there's definitely if you rescued a 2-year-old dog, or you're a dog trainer getting a dog in, or there's the whole like 8-week-old, much different pathway, kind of like in the confidence episode we talked, like you can start something very differently from a younger age.
Very true.
So if you're a dog owner with a new to you adolescent dog, or it's been a year or two since you had it as a puppy and it just doesn't come back when you call it, you're starting from that mature kind of mindset, kind of a dog that already ignores you or already does whatever.
Let's take this one step back.
Ooh.
What is your definition of a recall?
My dog comes to me when I call them, regardless of the distraction and regardless of the steps that I need to ensure they are back to me. So
I think that is a big point that is often overlooked in dog training, whether it's owners or from other trainers. Sometimes I see like a dog in an obedience position, and then the trainer walks away and then recalls the dog. And they're like, that's a recall. And I'm like, it's kind of like the baby steps of a recall.
Yeah.
To me, a more impressive recall is when you have like a hound dog smelling a rabbit hole and you're like, Fido, come. And they clearly want to be doing that. They're free to do whatever it is that they want. And they choose not to do that and come back to me.
Right. And even with that, I'm in the field of, I tend to not want to recall my dog from a stationary command a lot of the times, because it's a conflict of interest to me. Like, I know a lot of people do it, and they have great success with it, but like, if my dog's in a stationary position, I don't want them to have to second guess, like, yes, I told you a new command, listen to that new command. Kind of like, if I told you sit and then I told you down, listen to the down, right? But if I told you to down or I told you to place and then I recall you, to me, that's a competing interest, and there's no practical application for it. Like, my dog will never be on place in my living room and I need to recall them, or my dog, 99.999% of the chance, will never be in a down and then I need to recall them. So I'd rather proof they're down 100%. If they're in a down, they're in a down. I'm not interrupting it with a recall. Because again, like, if I'm creating distance from them, I want them to be relaxed. So I don't want them to be anticipating me potentially recalling them, because I've shown them that picture or whatever.
Yeah, there's definitely two schools of thought there. I recall my dog from positions all the time. Yeah. And that's just because I micromanage his lifestyle for the most part, because I have to. If not, like, people will get hurt or he'll destroy some shit in my house. So, like, even at nighttime when we're hanging out and nothing's going on, I'll put him in a down. And then, like, if I get up to go somewhere else, I call him to me and then work through the problems.
Yeah. And so that's not more advanced in a certain way, but like it's definitely outside of the like initial training phase.
For sure.
It's an elaboration of the foundation of it. But for starting it out, you know, with what I'm doing with the dogs, like we're doing e-collar training. So when I get that first dog in, or when I get that dog in on their first day, I get the e-collar on them because I'm going to be using tone with that. So like just like me saying the word come, I'm using tone. So like there is no like use of the stimulation on that part. Like we haven't been through conditioning yet. But I am putting the e-collar on them day one. Whether you do that or not doesn't matter. If you're just using the word come, like Fido come, that's great. The biggest thing to start recall training is having the dog on leash. You know,
yes,
we can talk about, you know, learned irrelevance, or, you know, if you say come, and the dog is off leash and the dog doesn't come back to you because they're distracted by whatever, that is the same thing as you sitting in a classroom, you're looking out the windows and the teacher says a word in Spanish. She shows you the picture on the whiteboard.
So we're in Spanish class now?
Yeah, or Italian or French, whatever. But you're looking out the window and like you heard that word, you know, it came through, but you were watching the birds and like the teacher's just wah, 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 and you don't see the picture of what she's trying to tell you that word means. So then, you know, homework or test day comes and you hear that word, like you don't know what the picture is. So same thing for a dog. If they're running around the backyard and I'm like, you know, Fido, come, here, boy. And they're just running around having a blast. If it goes from the backyard to the front yard and they, you know, get out of the vehicle and they get loose or whatever, and I say Fido, come, they don't know what that word means because like they've heard it 100 times, but they never saw the picture of getting back.
There's no value to it at that point.
Yeah. So like there's no value to it. And they just don't understand that there is value in a certain part of it, which is getting back to me. So like on leash, very first thing, you know, at short distances, 5 to 10 feet away, to where I can make it a distinct thing. Like if you're 5 to 10 feet away, you are very clearly and spatially not near me. If I say that word, or if I say your name, first of all, and I, you know, a little bit of leash pressure towards me, excitement, drive the dog into me, whether I like kind of backpedal a little bit, create that like anti-spatial pressure, or build that chase factor up to where the dog sees you moving away and they run into you because they want to chase you. Repetitions of that, you know, consistently. Same thing with any kind of command, is like the command should always, you know, be clear. The dog should be able to hear it, and repetitiously show them the picture every single time. So like every single time you say come, the dog has to come to you. And, you know, if you're thinking like, oh, well, how do I make them come to me? Like you make them come to you, you know, through enticing them towards you. And if they're not enticed by you waving the stake, you know, you use that leash and you reel it in just like you would reeling in a fish. You're going to bring that dog into you. If it's your dog, you know, hopefully after a year or two of owning it, it enjoys your presence. So as you kind of feed that line in towards you, they're going to rather resist against it. They're going to come towards you. And then once they're at you, you reward them, feed them, praise them, pet them. Continuing that over and over and over again. I can get into like the tools that I use as well. I don't know if you had anything or
no. The biggest thing there is the most important tool, whether you're going to do e-collar or any tool, like you have to have a leash. Mm-hmm. You have to put that point in where the dog cannot fail. Right. And it's not like it's failure, right? Like it's not like if you don't do it right on the first time, the dog's never, ever going to recall. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to be doing training, set it up with a purpose of make sure the dog can succeed, right? And just show exactly what you want. So even if you start recalls on like a 6-foot leash, it's not the end of the world. Right. My favorite tool for that is a flexi line, mm-hmm. Which are obviously very faux pas in the dog training world, but yeah. I love retractable flexi leashes. Only made by Flexi. All the other ones suck, but Flexi, legit. And then I started out short. If I have a food-motivated dog, I'll do food games where like I can toss kibble out, the dog runs and gets it, and then I run away from the dog or backpedal mm-hmm. and get the dog back to me, and I'll feed it food. So I'm rewarding the dog for going away and for coming back, because one of the things you can run into accidentally if you use too much pressure is you'll get a stage 5 clinger where the dog's like, hey, I don't want to go over there. Nothing good's going to happen to
Right.
me, so I might as well just stay here. But to try and alleviate that, food game, something like that. And then just once the dog is reliable and I can predict it's going to come back to me, that's when I'll start putting in either tone or a verbal to it. And in the beginning, like, I hate talking. There's no point to it. So just get the dog back to me and then gradually increase the distance from me. And for there, I have to kind of set up, maybe I start the recalls in like a house, right? Or a training room where it's not a lot going on. And then I'll get outside because that'll be the next layer of distractions that I have to work through where there's obviously tons of sight, sounds, and smells out there, so it's easy to distract the dog, get them away from me. At the point where the dog's not paying attention to me, that's when I'll start a little bit of leash pressure to get the dog back to me, and thousands of reps.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if you're, as a trainer teaching it, we always talk about, like, we were talking about this earlier about having like a fenced in backyard or not.
Yeah.
And as a trainer, like, having a fenced in backyard is a pretty big deal when you're getting a lot of dogs moving around the house. But I don't use my backyard because if I put a dog in the backyard, I don't want to have him on leash just because it's easier in that capacity. But when I'm potty breaking, I'm always out front on leash because I'm working in reps of recalls from day one there. So like they're on that flexi lead getting to be, it's a 26-foot line that rolls up. But like you said, starting at that shorter distances, like I'm not going to have them 26 feet away and then give them their first picture of recall. Like they're going to be 5, 10, 15 feet away. Practicing that a bunch, I actually find it helps the dog to go to the bathroom faster because instead of them just like aimlessly sniffing around, if I'm working them, like they're going to find up a spot to pee, I recall them, I free them, they go find a spot to pee, I recall them. They're like, damn, like this dude keeps recalling me. Like if I gotta go, I better go now. And like they're moving, like kind of like, if you stand still, like the dog isn't gonna go. So like you want to walk the dog around to go potty. So like if I'm recalling them and I'm bouncing them back and forth, they're getting more steps in, which makes them want to go to the bathroom faster. So kind of like double.
And you're getting less steps in.
Yeah, I'm getting less steps in. So it works those recall reps while you're potty breaking. So like if you want to work with your dog at home, stop letting them out in the backyard for a week or two, put them on leash, take them out front and potty break them on leash up and down the street, a couple houses up and a couple houses back, work those recalls in between there, work that practice in. And while you're doing that, we talked about like gaining distance. For me, I love a flexi as well. That's it's a great tool because your hands aren't full and like you're not dragging a leash underneath your feet and stepping on it, and then the dog like feels back pressure for an unnecessary reason. But once we've like layered in tone, once we've got to the e-collar conditioning stage to where I'm pressing tone, you're not responding because you're distracted, you're feeling leash pressure, and then you give into it and you come all the way back. Great. And then we're e-collar conditioning where that leash pressure becomes e-collar pressure. You give into it, back to tone, all the way back into me. Once we're hitting like successful reps there, and again, like this timeline for us could be 10 days, 14 days, whatever, just because we're putting in more reps, we're putting in hundreds of reps a day of it. For an owner at home, it might take a little bit longer, but eventually, once my dog is reliably doing that on a 26-foot line that's I'm holding, then we're going to switch to like a 20 or 30-foot long line where my dog can be like, first, I'm still going to hold it for a first couple sessions to where like I'm gaining confidence in the dog because the flexi has a little bit of like
little tension,
and the dog can see it. Like the dog can either as they're running back at you, they have that line in front of them. So like they see they're on leash, they see you're holding that leash. So I'll let that 30-foot line out and I'll still hold the handle, but like I'll kind of hold it at my side. And then the dog doesn't feel the weight of the leash anymore, and they're kind of feeling more free. I'm practicing those recalls. I'm seeing.
So you're saying like you lock out the long line, like press the lock on the flexi so that it has all 26, but there's zero tension on it?
Yeah, like so. Like,
or do you have a different leash that you use?
You can do that. Like I'll do that like as an intermittent phase before, if like I want to proof it really quick before I do grab just like a long line like biothane leash. It's got a handle, it's got a clip, but it's 20 or 30 feet long. And I always do biothane for my long lines because like dragging through the ground, getting mud, dogs. If a dog's attached to that leash, they're going to pee on it. It's going to drag through crap probably. So like biothane, super easy to clean and whatnot. RS Canine Training Supplies, we sell them. But
this is not an ad.
Yeah, we're going to have the store start sponsoring the podcast.
I love it.
But for that long line, it takes that weight away. So like the leash weight's on the ground. It's not tension back to you. And then the dog feels more free. So sometimes you'll notice they get distracted by something a little easier, or once they hear that come or they hear that tone, it's like, yeah, but I don't think I'm on leash anymore. Let me test this. Like, great. Like, I want you to test it. Like
yeah,
I
please.
want you to not listen to me because like I absolutely hate if a dog always listens to me. Like if from day 1 to day 10, 15, the dog comes every single time I say come, like I'm getting nervous because I wouldn't trust this dog off leash because we haven't found a distraction for them to learn what back pressure is or to learn what e-collar pressure is, to learn how to defeat it to get back to me. Because like if your dog comes every single time, you say it immediately when they are truly off leash and they truly are distracted. When you say come, if they don't respond, if you have an e-collar and if you introduce e-collar pressure, then the dog doesn't have a foolproof way to turn it off.
Yeah.
So if they feel that pressure, kind of like when you're, if your dog is learning how to use an underground fence, like you teach recalls the exact same way that you teach a dog how to be conditioned to an underground fence. You walk them on leash, they get to that beeping sound or that stim, you guide them back to you.
When I was a kid, we had the underground fence, but I don't know if the guy was like a sadist or whatever, but I had to do it.
Oh my God.
And like the difference between like a normal e-collar that we use daily versus an underground fence is like the adjustability of it.
Right.
Obviously the underground fence is designed to hammer the dog and stop it dead in its tracks. Yeah. Whereas like we can fine tune that pressure or the feeling. It's the same technology, so to speak, but it's just the amount of and the intensity behind it.
Right.
But it's just about, to me, like a recall, all it is it's a battle of competing motivators, right? Is the world more important or is dad or mom more important? So you just have to teach them fundamentally, like, I'm super valuable. Like, I always hear trainers talk about, like, you have to be more valuable than whatever it wants to do. Like, that's impossible.
Right.
Because, like, you take a high drive dog that is very prey driven. To me, I can't physically be more valuable than a dog hunting and killing a rabbit and getting that satisfaction.
No matter how much I love them, no matter how much I feed them and pay for their vet bills.
Like, never gonna beat that, but I can make that stop with the e-collar. I can put that consequence on it where now, obviously we've trained the dog up to this point, but now it's non-negotiable.
Right.
Like, you better get your ass back here, and then I can pay you for it. But you have to prep the dog. But I think the point you were talking about before we went down this rabbit hole is you're trying to get rid of using the leash to like physically get the dog back.
Right. Like they need to feel the e-collar pressure, the wireless pressure,
the Bluetooth leash.
Yeah. And know how to shut it off, because like with the underground fence thing, if you install the underground fence and you let your dog out very first time without a leash, if they go running towards that line and they hear the tone, they go, what's that? I don't know. They keep running, like momentum's going to carry them. Then they get stimmed at that super high level and it scares the crap out of them and it's uncomfortable. For one, that is going to light a fire under their ass to continue them in the same direction.
You
and
have
then
to teach them to escape it backwards.
Yeah, so once they break that threshold of that radio frequency and they get 10 feet on the other side of the line and it goes away, like, the pressure going away was the learning moment. So they learned, oh my God, like when it does not feel good over in this area, I have to run this way and it goes away. So then like, you see your dog is like loose and you go, oh shit, like the fence didn't work. And you go, you grab them, you pick them up, you bring them back over the line. Well, the next time that they're out and they get too close to that pressure again and they feel it, they're going to escape it the way that they know how to. And that's run away from the house, not run back towards the house, which is why on leash, you show them how to escape that pressure, so it becomes a foolproof thing where you can let your dog out in your backyard off leash, no fence, like off leash, no fence, to where they know the perimeter and they know if they get too close to it, how to evade that pressure. It's by coming back towards the house, not extending past the house line. So same thing, like with having them on leash first, showing them leash pressure, give into that, come back to me with the guidance of the leash, e-collar pressure, give them that guidance back to me to turn it off. And then once they've done that successfully numerous times, then I'm dropping the leash and I'm allowing them to get a little bit more distance. So like if it's a 20-foot leash, I'll let them get 30 feet away. Like once we've proofed it like as close as possible, now I know that like they've felt pressure, they know how to turn it off. But in that like just in case moment, I can close the distance on them and I still have 20 feet to where I can step on that leash.
You still have a safety handle on.
Yeah. And like that safety is super important because you're going to find something that like does distract them, you know, like, and it could be not them running towards it, but it could just be like, you know, they're 30 feet away on a 20-foot line, you know, you say come because like they see something and you say come and they don't listen, or you tone and they don't listen while you're closing distance to get to that leash, because you have to show them the picture. Because if you say come and they're watching and they're thinking and they heard you, but then they go, like they just learned come doesn't mean what I thought it meant, right? So like if they're off leash or the long line dragging and they don't have the e-collar on, and you can't either use that pressure to get them to turn it off to come back to you, or you can't foolproof get them back to you with that leash at all, they're going to learn, and it's going to be like a big failure moment that you have to now counter condition through with 100 more successful reps, backpedaled, training wheels back on to fight through that. A lot of times, like I have it happen, you know, either with the van or with the house. If I'm training dogs and like we're doing recalls, and you know, in any distance, like in a 200 or 340 degree angle from my house,
This is very specific.
yeah, like in like a Pac-Man shape around my house, like my dog will recall back to me, you know, every single time. But if I'm facing the house and the dog is between me and the house or me and the van, and like this is just kind of a point for like if owners come into this or if trainers come into this as well, if the dog sees the van, there's been so much positive association to the van, or if the dog sees the house and there's been so much positive association to like their kennel in the house or just the house or the front door in general, I'll make a recall. And if it was a distracting thing or if it was whatever, wherever they felt pressure, a few times the dog would want to go to us, like, not that I'm not a safe spot, but they've thought, hey, I'm closer to the van and the van is equally as fun as you are. Or, hey, the house is a little bit closer to me, I'm going to recall to the house because, like, I know that I can't be in this space. I just have to go somewhere that's good, essentially. So, like, training around the home or around the vehicle can sometimes have a little bit of problem there where, like, I'll make it an extra note. Like, if we're in the game lands, you know, I'll make an extra note. If the dog is between me and the van, I have that line, and we've repped that a bunch more times because, like, I know they're going to use that as that safe space.
That's the cool thing. I really enjoy about dog training is those weird little intricacies that you find like gaps where like the dog's just doing at that point what he thinks is right. Yeah. So somewhere in my training evolution, what I taught that specific dog is, and it's not something you need to make like a drastic change, like a philosophical life-changing moment. But maybe it was just that one dog learned it weird. But then if I start seeing habits in all of the dogs, be like, oh shit, I must be teaching the dogs like, oh, this is what I want you to do in this type of a situation. So all you do is just show them like, nope, that's not what I wanted. And this is what I wanted.
With that, I remember as a very young trainer, I made a recall training scar, and like, you know, maybe we'll get more into training scars about like place work and doing other things. Whereas what happened, and a training scar is just you're working towards something in particular and you accidentally miscommunicate and you've made what you want it to be a positive be a negative, essentially. So like my very first time seeing this essentially with recall specifically, it might have been my first training scar that I've ever really noticed, But I had, one of my very first dogs. It was a shepherd, super loving dog. Loved me, loved doing recalls. We would go out to the game lands every day. It had like progressed from the flexi to the long line to where like it was off leash. Like, we have our 5 collars on our dogs and all that kind of stuff for like tracking, but like it was off leash. The only way that I could touch it essentially was either with the e-collar or me putting physical hands like on its flat collar. There was no other thing for me to touch, which was where the issue became for this training scar. Was it's off leash doing its thing, running around, and we're going back to the van, like in the middle of the woods, nothing else is around, like no other safe spaces around. It's just me. So like every recall I do, it whips around, flies to me, it loves it, whips around, flies to me, it loves it. And then eventually it sees the van and it's like hauling back. It's like, cool, like I'm gonna get my kennel, I'm gonna get, water or food, whatever it is. And I was like, oh, like, let me recall you because like you're running too fast away from me, right? So I recalled them. The dog didn't listen. The dog was too far. I didn't have a leash on it at all. And what I did unknowingly, just as a junior trainer, like my first day of dog training school, I sucked. Like I was still learning. So my X months of being a dog trainer, I was recalling the dog, and I don't think we were using tone at that point. Like it was just come. So, I said the dog's name, I said come, and it kept flying to the van. And then, what you do is, you apply e-collar pressure to, make the dog not enjoy that particular thing. Well, I did that, and the dog was like, okay, like pressure's on. How do I turn it off? Go to the fun thing. Well, I'm already at the van. So let me just stay here and like hunker down and like the pressure will go away. And I didn't really know, like I knew if I turned pressure off, the dog would have learned to stay at the van, and then I would have had a training scar in that aspect. So I wanted to show the dog that it was doing the wrong thing. So I would like turn the e-collar up, like back then, like on the whatever educator we were using. I was like scrolling the dial, a little bit more pressure as you're still doing the wrong thing. And it was a fail situation for me. Like I should have trained it a lot differently, but I'm getting closer and closer to the dog as I'm still increasing the pressure. Hindsight, I should have just let the dog win in that moment, and counter conditioned and retrained working around the van. But what I did was like, I'm progressively yelling come louder, and I'm scrolling the e-collar up, and I'm walking closer and closer and closer to the dog so I can get the dog.
Did you get bit?
No. Like he was a very like good dog. Like I wasn't like raising the levels very, very high. But what I did was I made me getting closer and the pressure increasing a conflicting situation. So it took a lot more counter conditioning on that end of once I finally got to him and like I opened the van door and he jumped right in. So then going back home, retraining recall, like counter conditioning that problem that I made took so much longer. Whereas if I just let go of the pressure and I didn't create conflict with me and he just learned that like it was a bad thing to go to the van, we could have worked through that so much easier versus making me and pressure increase as my distance got closer.
Yeah, that's I think what happened there is it's more or less that battle of competing motivators. And at that point, maybe the dog wasn't prepped enough to that valuable of a competing motivator. And that's the number one thing I see in like the police, K9, and military world, trying to recall a dog. They always start at the most valuable thing on the planet to the dog, which is, if it's a dual purpose dog, biting somebody. And there's no prep work of like, I'm going to get you to the elite level. Like it's start at the top and like try to work through that chaos. And then I'll go to, seminars and stuff. And I'll be like, hey, what are you having a problem with? Oh, my dog won't recall for biting. I'm like, cool. Will he recall for ball?
Yeah,
and they're like, no.
Like,
and I'm like,
throw
then why
one piece of kibble and recall them from one piece of kibble. Like stop them from which is something that like you talked about. You'll throw a piece out, let the dog get it. He comes back and you give a piece. I'll do that in the beginning, and then eventually I'm scattering 5 pieces out, and I'm allowing the dog to eat 1 or 2, and then I'll recall. Like that's their first e-collar conditioning under a distraction that they'll typically get is like they're getting a piece and a piece. I'm saying come or I'm toning,
Yeah,
And then,
now it's non-negotiable.
yeah, like now it's not negotiable. Like you did what you wanted to do, but you can't go any further. Get back to me, or you're gonna feel the pressure of the leash or the e-collar, wherever we're at with it. But it's those baby steps of like, oh, okay, like ignore 3 pieces of kibble, come back, versus like,
ignore a pizza on the ground or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just weird. But steps to recall: just start on a leash, pay your dog for coming back to you.
Yep. Show them the picture.
Show them the picture. Keep doing reps.
Yeah, and like so, in hindsight of my training scar, if I had that long line on, that would have been a very preventable thing where like I could have grabbed that leash, and then like I bet if I added a little bit of leash pressure, like the problem is like not the problem with e-collars, but it's pressure that's non-directional. So if I had that leash and I could have directionally shown them what to do 20 feet away, and he would have given into it, and everything would have been fine. So like he wasn't prepped for that pitcher, like you said. I didn't have the right tools in that thing, or in that situation, which like it's a learning experience. I hit the ground running, doing training stuff, and the dog's great now. Like I probably see the dog once or twice a year anyway. He's still doing great, obviously, but there's training scars along the way that you want to prevent. Like put in the reps. The more training wheels reps you put in, the better it's going to be at the end. Versus like take training wheels off after one day of riding on them, you fall over. Like bike riding sucks.
Yeah, that is a common thing we see all the time is people take training wheels off of their dogs way too soon, or they may not even put training wheels on.
Yeah,
like bringing a puppy home and just allowing it free reign in the house and doing whatever it wants. So you just have to show the pictures, so set yourself up for success. But let's wrap this one up.
Yeah, for sure.
Hit the next one.
If you guys like the how-to stuff, we did how to not leash pull.
Let us know how to increase.
Let us know what you guys want to know about. We did leash pulling. We just did recall. I think we're gonna do how to stop jumping. We're just gonna kind of keep rolling
how
through.
to fly an airplane.
How to fly an airplane. We got a few different ideas, but let us know if you want to see anything.
All right, wow, my brain just shut down.
You can find me. I have some
you
telepathic
understand
power
my
there.
skipping.
You can find me at rsk9nc.greg, and all of your long line and flexies you can find at RSK9 Training Supplies.
Yeah, definitely. You can hit us up for training at RidgeSide K9 Eastern Carolina, or find me at Mike_Swarchek.
Yep.
All right.
If you're across the country, let us know. Maybe we'll develop some sort of coast-to-coast online thing.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know what that means.
We're going to drop the logo.
I'll probably slam some music
15 seconds
over
back.
that.
Like it's just going to show us doing this. Kind of like newscasters.
Yeah.
But it's going to be music playing.
Green screen.
Yeah.
And if you want a lion, let me know.
All right.